Like we are talking about this sensing. So it's a sensing is about all about the collecting the information about the world. So if we look at the sensors in that terms, the electronic and mechanical chemical device that map the environmental attribute to a quantitative measures. So that measures we can say as a, like a data attributes which we can utilize further. But they have there are like multiple attribute. Then attributes is having a mixture, and there are attributes which are hidden state in the environment. If we look at the like our temperature, pressure, and all these things, they are a mixture also, and they are all the hidden state in the environment. Now, each sensor is based on like a transduction principles, like conversion of one form of energy into the another, also known as like transducer. So we are looking for one form, converting one form into the another form, and the another form is more towards our application, or we can work on that. It's not like we can just simply throw, we can utilize that. So if we look at the sensing for a specific task, if we look at this example, where is the crop line is the question to we are asking to the sensor, and sensor will figure out like this is our crop line and we should do the harvesting at up to this point. So it's like one of the application of like sensors. So if we look at the type of sensors, we are saying like there are active sensors and there are passive sensors. So now, what is the meaning of a active sensor is like our radar technology or sonar technology, and how they are active, because we are sending signal into an environment and measure the interaction back from the signal with respect to the environment. So this is what we are calling as a active sensor, where we send the data and we receive the signals. Again, in the passive world, we are record the signals which are already present in the environment, like in our video camera examples. So type of sensor are also classified as a medium used. So the we are sensing through the sensors, but the waves are varying with different environments or mediums. So through that also we can classify them, and it is towards like based on the electromagnetic radiations of various wavelengths, vibration in the medium, concentration of chemical in the environment, and by physical contacts. We will look in the next slides how each of them are different, how each of them has having a different type of a sensor, what are their readings, and how we can utilize that. So some practical examples which we can see, like practical examples as well as the type of sensors we are going to look into. So it's like accelerometer sensors. So how it will detect is how it is useful is it's like detecting the measure of acceleration, like change of velocity, change of speed, direction. And the application, if we look at if we deploy that sensor in, let's say, a vehicle movement, and so whenever the vehicle will get an accident, met with an accident, it's a crash, and there is a huge drastic change in the velocity. Yeah. So once there is a change, we should trigger an airbag to protect the passengers. So this is one of the use case of this particular type of sensors. So in some industry applications, the vibration detection by an acceleration sensors could be an excellent indicator of a potential problem. Let's say in boilers, and there are a lot of vibrations. If a machine is about to fail, not getting failed but about to fail, so there are a lot of vibration, and then these things we can also detect, and before things are getting worse, we can fix them. So these are the applications we can look for this type of a sensor. If you look at MEMS sensors, so these are micro mechanical systems sensors. So they are majorly is deployed on the a chip, integrated on a chip, to measure a motion, direction, pressure, magnetic field, and other information. So they are like reliable, familiar, and cheap. And They are mainly, if you look at our application point of view, this can be used in a variety of applications, such as like handheld shake in the video. Whenever the camera is shooting something and somebody's handheld shake. So the point is like the our images is image will will not be get captured properly. So to detect that information and shoot a video or an image should be still image. It should not be a distorted. So there is another type of a sensor is we can say a band sensor. So it band sensor, the a name says like it's whenever a sensor is get banned, the outcome, the voltage will get also change. The outcome will change, and how the outcome will get changed and how we can use it is like, let's say it is like our resistance changes as it bends. So whenever it get bent, our resistance will get changed, and when resistance will change, voltage will change. So assuming current is a constant, if you look at one of the example of band sensor is like, consider a sample problem where band sensor specification is, let's say, 100 ohm when the node will be straight, and 1000 ohm when it's get bent. Okay. So, and consider an example, given a 5-volt source, what is the minimum and a maximum current that is drawn? So through that we can find out the minimum is like 5 ampere and maximum is 50. So it's like the range we can figure out when it is get bent and when it is like straight. If we look at again the example and the picture, so this is how we can figure out like how much it is bent and how much it is straight. So one potential use case we can look about like the bridge, and the bridge is how much tension in the bridge, how much it is getting bent. So through that we can figure out, and this is one of the potential application of a band sensors which we can detect. Another one is sound sensor, like the sonar, which we have looked as the active sensor, the category of active sensor, the sonar. So it's like sound navigation and arranging. So it's totally depends upon like the sound range which we are providing, and the reflection of that sound. So how much time it will take to get the reflection. We can given a range, we want to measure certain parameters. So measure a change in frequency, so it gives the relative speed of the object, like let's say it's a Doppler effect. So if you look at the sound sensor is majorly very powerful in terms of in water, in the sea. So the concept which are majorly utilized by bats and dolphins uses it with amazing results in water. Whereas if you look at the radar technology, this is more powerful in the air, whereas like sound system sonar technology is in the water. So with respect to robot uses, it is not that good results with sonar. There is another type of sensor. It's an odor sensor. So odor sensor is like detection of chemical compounds and their density in an area. So like if we want to detect like the chemical composition of an experiment or the chemical compounds, so we can utilize that type of a sensor. So it's like a chemical detection. So sniffers and electronic noses via wet chemical on a chip. So it will look about the type of the wet chemistry on a chip, and based on that it will detect like what type of a chemical compound it is having. So no major penetration in robotics, yet applications are vast. For example, like mine detection. So there are various ways, various platforms where we want to identify what are the chemical composition is present here. So we can utilize that odor sensors to figure out. So if you look at a pressure sensor, this is an example. This is like in one of the sensor example of pressure sensor. And if you look at a pressure sensor, so it is it's by the names, is the name says, like, if you provide a pressure on on that particular sensor, it will generate some data to you how much pressure it is. And this is what the objective of having a pressure sensor. A pressure sensor usually act as a transducers. It generates signals as a function of the pressure imposed. So that the amount of pressure you impose, the type of signals or the strength of signal it will generate, and through that strength of signals we can figure out like how much pressures it is having. So, like pressure sensors are used for control and monitoring of thousands of like everyday's application. Like pressure sensor can also be indirectly used measure other variables. Let's say uh, fluid, gas, water level. So if we look at our sea, and if we go as deep as whenever we go more and more deeper, the pressure will start increasing. So through that pressure sensors we can figure out how what is the water level at this particular point. So this is all the indirect applications of direct or indirect applications of pressure sensors, which we can use those sensors and figure out like when it is about to fail, the system is about to fail. So before failing we will detect many parameters and take the necessary actions. So again, the pressure sensors are like the variety of examples in medical, aerospace, and like wherever you can see their applications, you can apply. So this is one of the subpart of pressure sensor, like piezoelectric pressure sensors, wherever we are providing a piezoelectric force on a component of a sensors, and then it will generate a response in the mechanical stress, and due to that stress, we will figure out like how much the pressure it is producing. Another type of sensor is like moisture sensor. This is the one of the examples. And moisture sensor mainly we can utilize this in like harvesting, farming. So how much moisture this particular land is having. So this the two rod. If you look at in the examples, they are inside in the land, and then we can detect the moisture in the land. So this is one of these, probably not fixed to up to this. There are many other use cases you can figure out. So in the moisture sensors works when the works is of the sensor expands, they get wet. So it's more like these two knots is at a set and at to a certain size, and then they flip a micro switch inside that sensor, and this interrupt the current going from controller to waves, whereas the controller with value wells to start watering in the middle of a rain. So it's a more towards the application point of view. So I would like whenever the sensor is stop sending the signal, controller then do some actions. Otherwise, don't do. Like there is enough moisture in the land, in the sand. So we can say in that way, and we can utilize that type of a moisture sensor when to start watering in the irrigation, when to start in the agriculture. So through that we can take a decision up to what extent the moisture should be. If this particular threshold will get meet, we should start watering, we should start pumps again. These type of applications we can figure out through the moisture sensors. So sensor fusion is a type of a concept. If you look at, it's like combination of multiple sensors. So probably sensor fusion is the like process of combining sensor output from multiple sensors to create uh, in total experience. So in total, one of the application of this sensor fusion concept is look like if we consider the moisture sensor, if we consider the temperature sensor in agriculture domain. So if you look at in the agriculture and when to start pumps. So if we want to figure out, then we can consider how much moisture the current what is the reading of a current moisture sensor, and what is the temperature. So every month the temperature, every week the temperature is getting changed. So through the combination of sensors we can take a decision, and it is always gives a better result, and sampling is always give a better result, and it will help us to take a better decisions whenever we incorporate the multiple sensors. So it's a always a good idea to figure out to consider a problem and figure out what are the good sensors we should accommodate here in this problem statement, and take the data and combine them to figure out like what is the actionable insights. If we go to the like sensor choice, if we look at our sensor choice, like how to choose a sensor. So given a problem, how to choose a sensor. So what sensors we should employ to given a particular problem. So this is more towards a mapping. So if we look at the mapping as a mapping, like ranging. So in terms of range, laser is having more, sonar is less, infrared, and then stereo camera pair. So it's totally depends upon our application, which type of sensor in which medium we want to utilize that. So salient feature detection is more towards like doors using a color. So let's say a sensor is detecting whether door is open or not, so kind of just a rough example. So like doors using a color, so it will detect. So and the factors, so factors is also play a very important role while we choose our sensor. So let's say you want to go with terms of accuracy and cost. So it totally depends whether what type of projects or what type of problem statement it is. So if we are going to deploy in the production, of course we have more budget, and we want a more number of accuracy, like almost as accurate as possible. So it depends upon what is the environment, how much cost we have, like how much capital we can utilize. So through that we can pick up the sensors. So because every sensor is having a different cost, and deploying same type of sensor for multiple instances. I have one example I will show you in the next few slides. So there are same type of sensors are deployed at multiple locations. So how many sensors we should deploy? So like 50 is enough or 1000 is enough? It totally depends upon the problem statement and the scope of this statement which we are trying to solve. So these are the factors like accuracy, cost, information needed. So a lot of information will also distract our results. So if we consider in the big era, big data era, so how much information we needed, and where do you put them? So obviously it depends upon the type of sensors. Where do you put them? Type of sensor and application. Like in the agriculture, obviously we want to put the sensors into the soil, and near as possible to the soil. And if we look at our radar technology, obviously in the air, and similar to the sonar technology. So it depends upon the use case as well as the type of sensors we are using. So we can decide like where to put them on. If we look at like conversion to digital data, obviously the sensor will produce our like analog data, the signals. Through the analog we have to convert them into the digital data, and through the digital data we have to utilize them, the digital data. So obviously it totally depends upon the use case, like how you want to utilize that digital data. But the thing is, it is like a necessary, in most of the cases it is the necessary steps to convert from digital to analog to digital. Okay. So like it's if you like just I will read out, but it's like very fundamental concept to convert to digital data. But analog to digital conversion is an electronic process in which continuous variable signals is changed, and without altering its essential content into a multi-level digital signals. And sensor are often used in like local applications where the signal is processed using circuitry design. So the electronic signal must be converted into digital values, and or you can say a number form where more like a human readable form, so that we can get insight out of it. And sometimes also like we need to amplify that. So let's say signal is getting distorted and we want to amplify that, so through that also we can amplify and provide the digital signals. Okay, so sensor data filtering, yeah, so this is very important actually. So it is not always that sensors are giving very very exact accurate data. Sometimes we will get noise also in the actual data. We will get the noisy data also, and there is a mix of the noisy data with the gold data. So sometimes we have to apply certain type of a filtering to eliminate the noise or to reduce the noise frequency of the measurement to the requirement of the applications. So if you look at the example of a temperature sensor, generally changes its value relatively slow as the sensor matches its environment. So therefore a rapid change in reported temperature may be an inaccurate reading, which should be filtering to reduce potential error. So like filter to potential errors. So like if there is a temperature sensor, the values are getting changed slowly. So this is one of the use case of filtering the reading data. So yeah, so this is the example of pump sensor data from somewhere. So I have linked the data source. You can look into. So in this problem statement, what the user is saying that I have a 50. I have deployed the 52 sensors, and in those 52 sensors I have recorded certain type of readings. So every sensor is providing some type of a reading, and this is a like pump sensor data. And the user wants to figure out when the pump will get broken, or when it will about to create a problem. So if you look at, there is a problem statement is also given, and the problem statement says, uh, identify when it is going to fail. And this happened already 7 times in the past year. So in the past year, 7 times the pump was broken, and it was created a major issues in that particular area. So given a readings, identify when it is about to getting filled. So this is how the problem statement was formulated. So the objective of showing this is like how the sensor data is look like, and it is not fixed to this only. So it depends upon the type of sensor, the type of reading which we are getting. So many times you will get the reading in the range of between 0 to 1. Many time it will could be like 0 to little 0 to like 300, 1000. It depends like what type of sensors and how you are converting, what type of filtering we are applying. So but the whole and soul, like the data is converted into certain type of a numerical forms. And the problem statement is saying like, if this is the type of a record, then we can say it's a machine is in the normal state. If this is the data, it's in like normal, broken, and like recovering. So these two three types of state was given. And we have to model this data, and we want to figure out, or predict, actually they predict when it is about to going to fail, so that we can go and fix that particular pump related problem, or the sensor will tell us. So if you look at in this data, if you look at in this data, so there are a lot of, if sensor 5 is not at all giving a reading, or it's like only giving a reading of a 0. And if you look at the sensor 11, there are couple of entries which are giving a 0 reading. So how to deal with this kind of a data? So let's say we want to model this type of a data, and we have certain type of sensor, maybe it sensor is not working at all. So so these type of a reading will have, or that particular, given a particular timestamp, the sensor was unable to record. So these kind of informations we have. So how to deal with such kind of information? So we consider in at the time of data modeling, we consider this as a data pre-processing. So it depends like what type of problem you are solving. So in the phase of data cleaning, if you want to ignore those values, just drop the column f5, sorry, this sensor fifth one, the f column. So like drop that particular column, because it is not at all providing any meaningful information about that particular region where the sensor 5 was deployed. But if you look at the sensor 11, where are just three readings are zero, and other readings we have available certain readings, so we can fill that missing values. This is one of the approach. Even though you want to fill or you don't want to fill, it totally depend upon the problem statement and a trial and error one kind of a direction it is. But let's say if you want to fill that missing values, uh, there are certain techniques like go with the median value or go with the mean or median. So these are most frequently used techniques, and fill these values with the median values of the available column. So whatever values are available, calculate the median and fill the empty values. So this is called a data pre-processing step whenever we are going to model the data. And and if you look at the data nature, so there are zero reading and 0 point some 0 point x reading is also there. Somewhere I looked at, like, there are rows more than 50,000 rows was in the data set, but I just recorded few only just for a demonstration purpose. But there are few values which are around 250, yeah, from 0 point x to 250. So it's a huge range. So whenever we are trying to model, it is always a recommended or a better way to normalize that data. So normalization of a data means like just transform or just fix them in a particular range, so -1 to 1 or 0 to 1. So it always build your model. Whenever you are going for data modeling, it will always converge faster whenever the data will get normalized. And the attribute selection. So so obviously in this strategy, like, new attributes are constructed from the given set of attributes. So like there are 50 two sensors data we have. If we want to transform them, if we want to aggregate them, we can let's say 52 sensors are deployed a particular region. So and we have divided that region into like four chunks, four buckets. So what we can do, we can aggregate every bucket sensor data, and like produce a combined one. So like four columns instead of 52 columns, we have four columns based on the type of region. So it totally depends how we want to approach a particular problem. So this is one of the way to to generate a new attributes from the given data. And discretization is like replacing the raw values of numerical into by interval values. Of course, let's say this is the data like 0 to, let's say, 255, and you want to do the bucketing. So like 0 to 10 is one bucket, and like 11 to 20 and so on, you want to do a bucketing. Or let's say 0 to 50 is one bucket. So it totally depends. So this is also one of the processing step which can be done if required, and which can be done. And we can look around that, like how this pre-processing step is affecting our end results. If it is giving a better results, of course this strategy will work. So this strategy mainly work whenever, given a timestamp, the data is not not changing frequently. So this type of bucketing will work in that context. Another step is like data reduction. Or yeah, so as we have seen, like in the previous slides, there are a lot of data is getting generated from the sensors, and it's a big data era. So if we look at there is a, let's say, for a particular day, 20 in a 24 hours, millions of sensor data readings are available now. But the system which you have can't process those millions of millions of record, or it is unable to process those millions of records. So what we can do is we can go with like attribute subset selections, like the what are the highly relevant attribute we should be using, and rest of them all we can discard that. So in context of agriculture domain, let's say we want to focus on a particular area. So what we will do, for a given a timestamp, let's say for next 2 hours, we want to observe the reading of that particular region, and will model that only because we are targeting that only. So this is one type of a data reduction. And the another point is like dimensionality reduction, like principal component analysis and the wavelet transformation, where what we are doing is we are projecting our data into the in the another dimension. So where we will try to retain the information. Yeah, so let's say there are 1000 parameters we are having, and through 1000 we are getting 100% information. But if we can reduce those 1000 parameters into, let's say, 5 or 10 parameter, and we can get 99% of information, like we are getting a loss of 1% information, but we can tolerate that. Our application can tolerate that 1% of information loss. Then we can transform our data from 1000 to 5, and use that 5 dimensional feature to model our data. This is what the dimensionality reduction is. So it's obviously we will get the information loss, but if we can tolerate that loss, then we can go with that. And but it is not always true, we will get the we will lost the information. Sometimes we will, even though we are reducing the feature space, but still we can get the equal amount of information. So that is also possible. So this is how we can model that data. And like once the data is pre-processed and transformed and reduction is completed, like we are done all the necessary steps which we should be or we can do. Like we can use a machine learning technique to model our data into a predictive function. So let's say we want to build a predictive function, like in the sensor data examples we have looked for. So if we want to go for a predict, like, so there are three targets which we have seen, and we want to predict based on the given data. So we can utilize the machine learning technique and figure out what should be done. And there are a whole bunch of tactics available, like classification, clustering, like regression, or clustering and regression analysis, regression of like predicting a number in range of numbers, or we just want a label. So totally depends upon what exactly the problem we are trying to solve. But the data we have pre-processed it, and now we want to approach up to the next level using ML techniques. So if we have available, let's say, if we can tolerate the big data, so utilize that platform, utilize the big data tools like Spark, Hadoop, and all these things. But if you can't tolerate, then transform that and go with the our native approaches. So these all the things, like from sensor to model the data and then prediction. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep. Your session was quite informative for us, and we have learned a lot of things, a lot of new things from you. So
Thank
thanks
you.
once
Thanks,
again.
Amit.
So
Yeah.
participants, anybody want to ask any question? Professor Sandeep is available here. So any doubt?
Could you please explain more on the dimensionality reduction with the practical example? The other ones are very clear. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So, okay, dimensionality reduction. Okay, I will go with that. So, if we consider a principal component analysis is one of the approach of the dimensional reduction, and consider the data we have, let's say from sensor 00 to sensor 52. Yeah. So we have, let's say, 52 sensors data. Now, what we are saying is we are having a 52 attributes. Yeah. So for each record, there are 52 ways to represent that, 52 attributes. Now, instead of 52, let's say we have 5 million records. Okay, 5 billion, consider a big data set, 5 million examples. Now the thing is, we can't accommodate 5 million examples, or consider a 1 million record and 5 million features. So it's a huge data. Now that huge data can't accommodate in my RAM. Yeah. So what the techniques which generally picked as a dimensionality reduction is, reduce those 5 billion features into a meaningful features. Let's say from 5 millions we are getting reduced to, let's say, 100 features only. So 5 million to 100. Now now consider an example. 500 billion uh, attributes are giving me 100% information. Okay. Once that 500 billion the attributes are reduced to 100, obviously I will get the information loss. Yeah. So through the 100% information, I may be reduced to 95% of information, or let's say 97% of information with those new 100 features. Yeah. If my application can tolerate that 3% of loss, so if obviously previously I was getting 100%, but after reduction I'm getting 97% of information. But that 3% of loss I can tolerate, my application can tolerate, then I can go with that 100 sampled, 100 featured examples. And I can easily build a predictive model, because whenever there is a huge data, it's always a machine computation is also required. Like we can't accommodate all this data into the machine, and also we can't process all the data in one shot. So there are two type of predicting algorithms. If you look at online algorithms and offlines. So online algorithm will keep on updating whenever new data is coming, but offline algorithm, they are very good in terms of performance, but what they are doing is they want all the data in one shot. Yeah. So this is the difference, and this is the use case of dimensionality reduction. So we reduce the dimension or project into the different space. So like eigenvectors are the concept which are used in the principal component analysis. Does that answer your
Yes, yes. Thank you, Sandeep. Yeah, this is very useful.
yeah, yeah, okay, thanks.
Anyone else? If anybody moved, yes, Devraj.
Hello.
Yeah.
Which are the reliable platforms you use for data modeling?
Okay, and what do you mean by platforms?
Like there are Jupyter Notebook and lots of
Okay, so like for the data modeling, like Jupyter platform is towards like building a POC and all. But whenever building a POC, or like just we want to try